Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first live edition of Throwing Stones here on Detroit Sports Nation. If you guys aren't familiar with us, it is our basketball show, and usually we have myself. I'm Ryan Griffin, and we also usually have Matthew Basson with us, but unfortunately he cannot be here today. He's got work. He's got to feed his family. Something stupid like that. So you guys have me. Make sure you're following us on all the Detroit Sports Nation platforms. Obviously, the one you're watching this on right now, but we got Twitter, we have Facebook, we have YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all that fun stuff. So go look. We're going to bring you the playoff edition right here of the Throwing Stones episodes. Chat a little bit about the NBA playoffs, maybe something about the Detroit Pistons, whatever you guys want to know. We are here to talk about. And I'd say the first thing that's really surprised me about these playoffs have been just the 76ers dominance over the Toronto Raptors. Now, if you guys didn't hear our last episode, we talked about it a little bit, but that's when the Sixers were only up 2-0 on the Raptors, and now they're up 3-0. And last game, it was super impressive because I think they were down like 16 at one point, stormed all the way back to force overtime, and then Joel Embiid hitting that really epic like turnaround three-pointer. Not quite as time expired, but only with about zero point 0.7 on the clock. And what that's done is it's kind of gotten Philly over that hump because the closest that Philadelphia has probably been to winning a championship in the Embiid era was obviously the year that they won against the Toronto Raptors and Kawhi Leonard, and he hit that, miracle shot in Game 7, one of the best shots in NBA history. And then you had the the meme of Joel Embiid crying after the game. And now it seems like the Sixers can get back there because there's a couple things happening, not just in the East, but in the playoffs in general. Devin Booker's out for the Suns, out 2 to 3 weeks with, I think, a hamstring. Chris Middleton today, he was just ruled out like 3 to 4 weeks. So things are opening up a little bit for the Sixers. And if they can finish off this sweep of the Raptors, I think that'll go a long way in building confidence. It's going to slay a boogeyman of sorts. It's, of course, not the same Raptors team that they lost to in 2019, but they still have some of the same pieces. You still have Fred VanVleet there. You still have Nick Nurse. You still have Pascal Siakam. So for Philly, for I think Joel Embiid, really especially to kind of slay that dragon in the next round, they'd be facing probably the Miami Heat if they're able to get by the Atlanta Hawks, which I don't think anybody really has any doubts about. I think the Heat can really make that. I'm sorry. I think the Sixers can really make that a series against the Heat. And now the Sixers, they look like they have a path to the NBA Finals. Whereas maybe before the playoffs, you thought they couldn't quite do it, but you have a guy like Joel Embiid. You obviously have James Harden. Tyrese Maxey has played really well in 2 of the 3 games against the Raptors, and it's pretty good to see, and pretty fun to see. Right, this is kind of the first year where it feels like the NBA championship window is wide open, and while Phoenix was probably the favorite heading into the playoffs, they've been the best team all year. Again, they just lost Devin Booker, and now the Warriors. Even if you were a believer in the Warriors have still probably played above what you were expecting the Warriors to do. So there's no real locks anywhere. And then the East, obviously, you have teams like Philly, you have teams like the Heat, the Celtics, or the Nets. Whoever comes out of that series, the Nets had a real kind of epic collapse in Game 2, and Boston was able to take that one at home and go up 2-0 in the series after Kevin Durant probably played the worst playoff game that he's ever played and probably that he ever will play. I think he was 0 for 10 in the second half, where if you're going to stake your claim as the best player in the world, that's just not something that you can really, have, right? You think about if that had happened to LeBron, social media would absolutely be flaming him. Even a guy like Steph or like Giannis. We've seen them have some struggles in the playoffs, and everybody was attacking them. So I think you probably just have to keep that same energy for Kevin Durant, and he could come back in Game 3 easily and score 50 points, and get the Nets, get the Nets a game, and then it's only down 2-1. But last game was really, it was really bad for the Nets, obviously, and it's probably a really big boost for the Celtics knowing that they can go down like that when you are going against guys like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to come back and and still win the game and just fight through what was a tough game. Yeah, some of these, some of these injuries again are taking place. We talked about teams out east. Chris Middleton again out 3 to 4 weeks. Not that the Bucks should really have so much trouble with the Bulls in this series. I know they lost last night, but I still think the Bucks, even without Chris Middleton, can make pretty easy work of Chicago. But then, I guess the struggle would come in the next round when they face either the Celtics or the Nets, and you don't have your second best player, you don't have your second leading scorer. It makes things a lot more difficult on Giannis, on Drew Holiday, on all the other guys who just have to step up. And especially Drew Holiday, who really hasn't played that well at all, at least in these 3 games that that the Bucks have been playing. He was great last year in the finals, so I don't have any real doubts that Drew Holiday can come in and get it done. But as far as this year in the playoffs, he hasn't shown that same like level of play that he was at in the finals last year. And then out west again, Devin Booker, it shouldn't really affect the Suns in the first round. I don't think they should still be able to make light work of the Pelicans. Now, if Zion comes back, that could be a different story. I'm really hoping that Zion is able to come back sometime in this series and really make it competitive, right? I think an 8-over-1 is always fun, but for Zion not play all year, then if he can come back in the playoffs and you add him to Brandon Ingram and you add him to CJ McCollum, and now I think they do have a real shot to beat the Suns if he was able to go. But it seems like the Pelicans and Zion are still beefing about how hurt he actually is. So I don't see that happening. As big of a fan of Zion as I am, and as much as I would love to see him come back, I just don't think it's really in the cards right now, and that obviously bodes well for Phoenix. Especially playing without Devin Booker. I think the Pelicans are obviously less of a threat if they don't have Zion Williamson. And the Warriors, new death lineup, if you want to call it that. We just did a video on it. It's on our YouTube for Throwing Stones. But this lineup is doing absolutely insane things when they're on the floor together. With Steph Curry, with Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole. You got 3 guys that can score the ball almost as well as anybody, right? If Jordan Poole is your second or third option, and then Klay Thompson is your second or third option, depending on how you flip them, it's an incredible just amount of firepower to have to deal with on defense. And there's really no way to guard all 3 guys because you can't really guard any of them one-on-one because they can kind of kill you that way, especially, Klay Thompson. Jordan Poole and Steph are going to have the ball in their hands more than Klay Thompson will. They're going to be responsible for more of the playmaking. And then you're just allowing Klay Thompson to run around with screens and get open. And it's just not a recipe for success, really, no matter who you are. And then you still have a guy like Andrew Wiggins, who at one time in his career, I think he was close to like a 25 point per game score for a season. And he's a guy who's gotten better, shooting threes and just, kind of attacking in general and playing basketball the right way. And then, you have Draymond, who's been really good defensively. Wiggins has been really good defensively. Klay Thompson is still good defensively. And one thing that Draymond brought up on his podcast, which I thought was really interesting, and it was a great point, is the reason, and it's only been 2 games, so it's a small sample size, but the reason that this new death lineup or death lineup 2.0, whatever you want to call it, has worked out so well is because all the guys can rebound. So while you don't have, a true center, all the guys are pretty good rebounders. Draymond's a good rebounder himself. Klay's a pretty good rebounder. Andrew Wiggins, with this lineup, has been more aggressive in attacking the glass. And Andrew Wiggins is still athletic as all hell. And he can help get the rebounds, especially if Draymond's over there battling Jokic. And even if Draymond doesn't get the rebound, if he prevents Jokic from getting the rebound and allows a guy like Wiggins to swoop in and grab it, then that is, of course, a win for the Warriors. And then you have Steph, who's a really good rebounder for a point guard, especially. So for those guys to like to work. Obviously, you have to grab the ball when the other team misses, and they've done that so far in these first few games. We'll see if they can continue that, but if they can, then that is a scary sight to see for the rest of the league because this is the first time this year those five guys have really played together and they're already playing like this. So it's not something that you're going to have a whole lot of tape or film on to be able to stop. And if they're already, hitting on all cylinders, you would think most of the time, right? Teams are only going to get better the longer the year goes on, than the longer that they play together. So if they're already like this, and common sense would say they're going to get better as they just learn to play with each other a little bit more. These five guys specifically, then I think that creates a really interesting dynamic out west, where the Warriors might honestly shoot up to be the title favorites, instead of the Sun or instead of the Suns or instead of a team, out east like Milwaukee or something. And some of these award races for the NBA have really come to a halt. I think Coach of the Year was already announced, and Defensive Player of the Year, which Marcus Smart got, which got a lot of people upset that Marcus Smart won Defensive Player of the Year. Uh, I think Marcus Smart should have won it. No, but I am happy that he won it in the sense that I'm just glad it went to a wing player. I'm sick of Gobert getting it every year because because he can block shots and because he can rebound. And while that's valuable and while he is a really good defender, I think it's a little bit more important to be able to guard guys on the perimeter because the NBA is a perimeter based game now. So I think guys like Mikal Bridges or even Jaron Jackson Jr., who can do a little bit of both. Draymond Green, Marcus Smart, Drew Holiday. I think those guys are a little bit more valuable on the defensive end, especially in the playoffs. Even though these awards aren't playoff awards, than a guy like Rudy Gobert is. And with these awards not being playoff awards, that brings us straight into the MVP conversation, where Jokic is probably going to run away with the regular season MVP. They haven't announced it yet, but that certainly seems like where things are trending towards. And obviously, his team's down 0-2 to the Warriors. He looks like he's going to be another quick exit in the playoffs. Last year the Suns swept the Nuggets out the playoffs, and Joel Embiid, who's probably going to finish second, is up 3-0. He just had the hero moment in Game 3 of their first round series. So now there's a lot of people who were Embiid truthers to the MVP race, saying, "See, we told you Embiid's way more valuable than Nikola Jokic," and it's easy to make that argument now because he's having more playoff success, at least in this limited this like limited playoff sample size that we have. But you have to keep in mind that doesn't mean anything for the regular season. These awards are regular season awards. So even if you have an MVP getting bounced in the first round, that shouldn't affect their MVP case so much, unless you just want to sit there and restructure whatever your criteria is for the MVP race. For a long time it went to sort of the best player on the best team. Now with advanced stats, it's kind of gotten away from that. And I don't know if there's really a way to adjust it with the voters, because I think a lot of them are always going to, at least moving forward, lean on advanced stats because they seem like they're better than the stats that we've used before: points, rebounds, assists, all of that stuff. And if I think part of the problem though is that some of these advanced stats can lead to guys on worse teams because they have to do so much. So, guys like I'm sure Luca will experience this in the future. I have no doubt that Luca Doncic is going to win the MVP, but is he ever going to have the Mavs as like a 3 seed or better in the West? I'm not so sure, but he's going to have the ball a lot. He's going to put up awesome numbers, and the Mavs are always going to be trash if he's not on the floor. So it's going to make his analytic numbers skyrocket. But is he ever going to be, the best player on the best team in the West? And it doesn't seem like that. No, obviously Dallas would have to get him some more help, but same thing with James Harden with Houston, except James Harden with Houston actually got the Rockets. I think he got them a 1 seed, as well as a 2 seed. So he was able to find that regular season team success, which some of these other guys haven't been able to do. But we've seen it obviously flame out in the playoffs, which is kind of unfortunately what James Harden has been pretty famous for. I do want to get a chance to get you guys involved here. Do you guys have any questions on the playoffs that you would like to hear answered? Any just observations that you may have made, watching these playoff games? I'm sure there's what, like three or four more tonight, which is why I love the first round because, it's probably the least important round of the playoffs. But you just get a playoff game every night. You get playoff basketball every night. And even if you don't think a team like Minnesota is going to upset the Memphis Grizzlies, you can still have that game where that 7 beats a 2, and then they're all hyped, they're all excited about it. So I'm all for playoff basketball, and the series get better as the playoffs move on, which is fun. But I don't know. It's really a toss up for me on, do I want to see basketball every night, or do I want to see basketball every second or third night, even though it's just in the series are better. It's two better teams going at it. While you guys are getting your questions in or thinking of them, I would like to take this chance to remind you to obviously subscribe to Detroit Sports Nation, whatever platform you're watching on now, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, whatever the case is. Make sure that you're going on Detroit Sports Nation wherever you spend time on your phone. And just like and subscribe. Like the videos, subscribe to the videos, comment on them. There's a ton of content, not just basketball. There's football talk, there's baseball talk, and something pretty much posted every day. So that way you guys can, go scroll through our archives and see what you agree with, see what you disagree with. The important thing is that we're having these discussions, right? And that we're having these debates. And if you guys like what you hear, shoot us a message, shoot us a like, and a subscription, and it's going to help us grow. It's going to help us know what kind of content that you guys like best. Let's see. Let's see what games they have going on tonight. See if we can get some predictions here. So we got the Grizzlies and the Timberwolves. The series is tied 1-1. Who do you guys think is going to win tonight? It's the first game in Minnesota, so that could be pretty interesting if Minnesota is able to pull this out, and then all of a sudden they're up 2-1 with the second game at home. We have the Mavs and the Jazz. I think Luka Doncic is still out for Game 3 in this game, but that series is tied 1-1, and it is the first game that will be in Utah. Without Luka Doncic, I think the Jazz should be able to beat the Mavs pretty easily. Um, I just don't see, and not that I'm a huge fan of the Jazz. If you guys have watched any of our videos, you would know that the Jazz aren't my favorite team. I think they're kind of built to be just a regular season team, and now you're starting to see some cracks in their foundation with their best players, not liking each other very much. But I do think it's still a team that's been battle tested in the playoffs before. And if you're going to be the Mavs and not have Luka Doncic, you're just fighting an extremely uphill battle, especially to go into Utah, which is a tough place to play, and pull out this Game 3 in a game that the Jazz probably feel like they have to have. Because say Luka doesn't play Game 3, but the Mavs are still able to pull this out. Now the Mavs are up 2-1, and then if Luka comes back for Game 4, that's a huge emotional boost for Dallas, and that is a situation that Utah should try to avoid at all costs anyway. And then you do have the Warriors and the Nuggets as the nightcap today, starting at 10 o'clock Eastern time. And I think I don't know. This is a series that honestly I thought was going to go 7 games. I thought the Warriors were going to take a little bit longer to gel than they did. And I thought Denver, even with their injuries, had been gelling as a team because while they don't have Michael Porter Jr. or Jamal Murray, this is kind of the group that they've been playing with all year. And I could not have been more wrong. Golden State just went and absolutely has blown the doors off them the first 2 games. Game 3, obviously in Denver. So we're going to see if Denver can hold home court tonight. But Golden State, the way they've been playing, it just doesn't seem like Denver has any options for him. I mean, they're bringing Steph Curry off the bench, and he's dropping 34 points in 22 minutes. So that is absolutely no way to beat the Warriors. And I don't see so much changing tonight. If I did have to guess some winners tonight, I'll go with the Timberwolves, actually. I think, the Jazz, not the Jazz, the Grizzlies were really emotionally up for last game, especially dropping game one. John Morant posted that video of Michael Jordan from The Last Dance where he's got the bat and the cigar, and he's saying, "Oh, it's easy to talk crap when you're winning. It's hard to do it when you're losing, though." Um, and then the Grizzlies came out and really gave the Timberwolves the business. But I like this Timberwolves team, and I think the Grizzlies are still flawed to an extent. I think tonight is a game three. I think that's a game that the Timberwolves can come out and win, and I do think they'll grab that 2-1 series lead, and they'll probably be. Maybe it won't be the story because you have the Warriors still playing, and you still have like Kyrie against the Celtics and everything else. But I think the Timberwolves will take a 2-1 lead. I think the Jazz will beat the Mavericks pretty handily, and I got the Warriors going up 3-0 on the Nuggets tonight. So if you're looking for a three-game parlay, there it is. Um, Money line, Timberwolves, Jazz, and Warriors. And then if you win, just send me a little bit of a cut, 5%. That's all I ask. Not greedy. But who do you guys think is going to win these basketball games tonight? And who is your pick to win the NBA title? I was thinking it was going to be a rematch of the Bucks and the Suns. Uh, I don't know that I'm thinking that anymore, right? I think the Bucks still have a good chance, but without Middleton, say they face the Celtics next series, and they don't have Middleton for the entire series. Basically, is sort of what it sounded like. That changes those dynamics a whole hell of a lot. Um, and the same thing with the Suns with Booker, where if they're the one, the 4 or 5, the Mavs or the Jazz. So I think Phoenix has a little bit easier time next series with either the Mavs or the Jazz. Whoever comes out of there, even with Devin Booker, I think the Suns should be able to win that series. But you don't really know. I guess with the Warriors looking so good, if the Warriors uh, and the Suns meet up in the Western Conference Finals, I'm not so sure that I wouldn't pick Golden State in that series. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'd say right now, honestly, the two teams I'm liking the most, it might just be recency bias because they're up 3-0. I'd say the Warriors and the Sixers in the finals if I had to call it right now. But that could change. It's obviously changed since the start of the playoffs. We have a comment here from Don George says, "Which current playoff team do you see having the best chance to become a dynasty team?" That's a really good question. Out of all these, ooh, so there's two that come to mind pretty easily. One is the Boston Celtics because they have Jason Tatum, they have Jalen Brown, who are still both young, they have Marcus Smart, and it's a team who seems like they know what they're doing in the front office and with the coach. Right, Brad Stevens relieved himself of coaching duties um, and took over in the front office. And then they hired who seems to be like a really good coach, and he's got the Celtics running on all cylinders, and they kind of have I would say they have the start of the dynasty already. With the coach Ime Udoka and kind of two franchise pieces, and Jason Tatum really looks like he's ascending to be close to the top 5 player in the NBA. And if you're going to win a championship, you're probably going to have a top 5 player. Right. We saw it with the Lakers. They had LeBron and AD, arguably two top 5 players at the time. Last year, Giannis certainly a top 5 player. Kawhi Leonard, when the Raptors won it, obviously top 5. The Warriors had two top 5 with Kevin Durant and Steph Curry. The Cavs, when they won it, had LeBron a top 5 player. I'd say, and really the only team you could say that won it, the last team you could say who won it without top 5 player was the Spurs when they had Kawhi. And I don't think that version of Kawhi Leonard was a top 5 player, but that was just a really solid team all around. And they had, the best coach in NBA history, maybe uh, coaching them at the time. You go back before that, the Heat, again, probably two top 5 players with Dwayne Wade and LeBron James. Dirk Nowitzki probably wasn't top 5 for the Mavs, but again, a really solid team, and Dirk was probably like top 8 at the time. And obviously Kobe in the years prior to that. So if you're going to win the title, you need to have a top 5 player in order to do so. And the Celtics look like they are on the verge of having that if Jason Tatum is continuing to play the way that he is. Um, Other than that, I don't know. I like the Harden and Embiid pairing, especially with Maxey there. But Harden's probably too old to be considered, any part of a dynasty team this year. And the other team I would look at as almost like a wild card team, and it's entirely dependent on who else they can get, is the Dallas Mavericks. They have Luka Doncic, who's going to be, how LeBron's getting all of these milestone stats where it's first player to 30 points, 10 assists, or 10,000 points, 30,000 points, like 10,000 assists and 10,000 rebounds or something like that. Luka's going to be right there on that same trajectory for, I think, the next 20 years. And it all depends on if they can get him, a second running mate. And then I think that's going to be a team that's really scary. And then the Bucks still. I mean, you're going to have Giannis, especially if the Bucks win the title this year. You're looking at back-to-back championships. You're looking at a leader who's probably a two-time Finals MVP if they win it, and then a two-time regular season MVP as well. And then I think Giannis is going to start getting some all-time talk, where if they win the title this year and Giannis has another incredible Finals run, you're going to start people talking about Giannis as like a top 10 to 15 player of all time. Does Kade have top 5 potential, or do we still need to add that guy? I think Kade does have top 5 potential. There's a couple things that he needs to get better at, and I think if you're looking at a top 5 guy, there's things that I guess all of them can get better at, but Kade needs to improve his ball handling, and then I think he'll probably be, like unstoppable. Ball handling and finishing at the rim, but I think he absolutely has that potential. He's really good defensively already. He can obviously run a team, and he's got sort of a Chris Paul aspect to him where he can slow the game down and he can make the game play to his pace, which is really an impressive trait for somebody that is so young. And with time, his shot's only going to get better. He didn't shoot the ball well at all this year, but that's not in line with his like just career as a basketball player up to this point. So I'm not worried about Cade Cunningham's shooting ability as it relates to the NBA at all. And I do think that Cade, with time, given what he's going to bring you on the defensive end, and given how he's going to control the game, can sneak into that top 5. But it's going to be hard. You're looking at guys that he's going to be competing with for the next 10 years. Giannis, Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum. Even guys who, if you're going to throw in a John Moran in there, or like a Devin Booker or somebody like that. Like, there's a lot of really good young stars in the NBA. And I do think Cade can be one of those stars. I mean, ESPN put out their top, 10 under, or top 25 under 25, and Cade was 6 on their list. So if you're going off that, they certainly think that he can be a top 5 guy. But I think top 5 is really hard to break. And I do think Cade has that ability in him, but it's tough, man, because you look at that list of 5 fills up real quick, and there's just some non-negotiables in there, right? Giannis, again, Luka, Jokic, right there. That's 3 of the 5 guys, at least for the next 10 years, who are going to be, again, 3 of the 3 of the best 5 guys in the NBA, and that leaves up 2 spots for debate, and you still have so much crazy young talent that if Cade does break that, it's going to be hitting the jackpot for business fans. What else? Yeah, so like, if you guys talked about the NBA draft a little bit, I know it's probably a little bit more pressing to Detroit fans. Not that you guys don't care about the playoffs, but the Pistons aren't in it. We've kind of resided to the fact that Cade's probably not going to win Rookie of the Year. So the thing that we have to look forward to is the NBA draft, and the Pistons have the tied for the best shot to get the number 1 pick. They're at 14% because they have a bottom 3 record in the NBA. But really, what they want to do is keep themselves in that top 3 so that they can grab either Chet Holmgren, Jabari Smith, or Paulo Banchero. And if you fall to 4, then you're probably looking at a guy like Jaden Ivey. If you fall any further than that, then I just kind of just pick your guy. There's a couple guys probably around 5 to 10, and you can shake them in whatever order that you want. And I don't think anybody could really be mad at you. But I think the top three in this draft are what everybody's at least going to be hoping to get. Of course, you want number one so that you can have your pick at the three, but you can't really complain about any of the three because I think they can all fit the Pistons and they can all fit Cade Cunningham in different ways. Obviously, Chet Holmgren's going to give you the high upside as a shot blocker right away and as a rim protector, which the Pistons don't have. And he's going to be able to step out and hit the three. And the Pistons don't really have, a stretch big either. You have Luka Garza, but Luka Garza probably isn't going to play so much. And Stewart is still not, consistent with his jump shot. And I don't know how much longer Marvin Bagley is going to be on the team. Or was he just a guy who the Pistons, took a shot on and has played pretty well for him? But I still don't know that you see Marvin Bagley as a long-term future Piston. So Chet gives him that upside. Obviously the question mark with him would be with his body, and the other two guys don't have question marks about their body at all. Paolo Banchero is real strong and real solid, and can finish around the rim. He might be the most NBA ready out of all three guys, and he's just it's like you just look at him, and he looks like a freak athlete. He can't shoot as well as the other two guys can, but he can handle the ball. He can take it to the rack. He's probably not as good of a defender as Chet is, but there's no reason that I guess he can't be a defender unless he just doesn't want to be, because he is quick. He does have the body for it. It's more just like the want to, at least for me, with Paolo, because I think there were times this year at Duke where he got a little bit lazy on defense, and maybe that's just because he had to do so much on offense. I'm not too sure, but if you can get him in the NBA and you get him caring about defense, then I think he can be a real force in this league. And then Jabari Smith is the best, I'd say, shot creator out of all of them, and the best shooter too. I mean, he can shoot from anywhere. He can get off his shot from anywhere, and I think Jabari Smith right now is the guy who I would want. And then you give Cade, another, really good shooter to pass the ball to and just make life a little bit easier on him. And Jabari is a guy who can make tough shots as well. Like Paolo can too. But I think Jabari is like a better tough shot maker, if that makes any sense. And I think he's probably better defensively than what Banchero will bring you. But I think all of the guys really can fit what the Pistons want to do, because while I think if you're at this stage with the Pistons, what you do need is, don't really go for fit. Just pick who you think the best guy is going to be. Accumulate the talent and then figure it out later. But I do think that if the Pistons had their chance in a perfect world, the best player in the draft would be a big guy, and it seems like that is the case. So I'm really happy with how the top of this draft has been playing out, and I would just really, I really want the Pistons to get one of these three guys, because again, I do think if the Pistons had their way, they're good. They would take a big, but I just don't know that. Uh, Obviously that's going to fall that way, but I enjoy it very much. But yeah, so Banchero, Jabari, or Chet are the three guys Pistons fans should be praying for. And then if you drop to four, you're looking at guys like Keegan Murray, Jaden Ivey, kind of fall in that 4 or 5 range. The Pistons, I think the Pistons can look really good or really different next year. Probably not so good, but you would expect they try to trade away Jeremy Grant sometime before the draft. You hope the team gets desperate and gives you, the first round pick. There was a lot of talk or speculation that if the Blazers had the Pelicans first round pick, that they could give that to the Pistons in a trade for Jeremy Grant. The Pelicans made the playoffs, so that ended up not happening. The Blazers only have one first round pick, and it's probably going to be higher than the one that they got from, or that they would have gotten, I guess, from the Pelicans. So that not that that put a nail in that coffin, but it gave Portland certainly less assets to trade for Jeremy Grant with. But you never know. Teams always emerge from, it seems like, out of nowhere. Guys get traded and teams get assets back, and then if they flip that for Jeremy Grant, so I'd say probably just wait and see on a Jeremy Grant trade. I don't think he's going to be on the Pistons next year, but I also don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world if you held on to Jeremy Grant until next trade deadline, because you're going to get teams who want a rental, and teams who feel like maybe they're Jeremy Grant away from a deep playoff run, because we've seen with Jeremy Grant as the best player on the team, that's gotten to the Pistons to the first overall pick. But if you have Jeremy Grant and now he's your third or fourth option, and he's already proved that he can at least be a number one option or handle the ball or score the ball or whatever you need him to do, that is going to be valuable to some of those contending teams. And I'd just be excited to see kind of who he goes to, and no matter who he goes to, I would obviously wish him the best, as long as it's not a team like the Chicago Bulls or something, or one of the Pistons rivals. But if you send him anywhere in the West, then good luck to you, Mr. Grant, is what I would say. Not only with trades could the Pistons look different next year, but I mean they could look way different in free agency, right? They could throw the bag at a guy like Miles Bridges or a guy like Jalen Brunson, who had 41 in their last playoff game, and really led the Mavs to victory in that game. And it, as much as I like those two players, if you're going to talk about like a max contract, which is at least the case in Miles Bridges, where it was reported that he's looking for the max, I don't know about that. I'm a Michigan State fan. I love Miles since he was in college. Since he's been with the Hornets, I think he's gotten better every year. But you're talking about a max. You're talking about basically like $35 million a year for Miles Bridges, and I just don't think I don't think that's the path to success for the Pistons either. As much as I would love Miles, uh, I'm thinking 25 million a year, not 35, not a max. I think that's how I think that's how, as a team, you don't get very far in the playoffs. It seems like he's probably better than what Tobias Harris was, which the team gave Tobias Harris a max contract, and he's been moved 5 times in like 5 years. It seems like I know he's finally having success over in Philly, but he's got two better players on his team with James Harden and Joel Embiid. Obviously they got Maxey coming up as well. And then, obviously you look at a guy like Brunson, who's probably not going to get the max, but is more unproven than Miles Bridges is. I feel like I'm haunted or something. I keep the window open because my cats like it, and then all of a sudden, I get spooky ghost in here. I don't know that there's really so many other guys that the Pistons have been necessarily like linked to in free agency. Um, those are obviously the two big names that have been floated out for a while for Detroit. But there's always some smaller guys I can go after. Obviously they grabbed Kelly Olynyk last year, and I expect the Pistons to be better next year. I don't expect the Pistons to be like the worst team in the NBA again. Um, I know there were some people expecting that this year. I thought they'd be near the bottom this year, and obviously they were. But next year, you have second year of Kate Cunningham. You have Killian Hayes, who finally has a full season under his belt. And you might laugh at me. You might not be a Killian Hayes supporter. I am. I own property on Killian Island. Big Killian guy here. But next year is probably like the make or break a year for him. He just has to stay healthy. But I think if he stays healthy, he can get what he needs to get to be part of the Pistons long term. He's a great defender. He's a great passer. If he can just get like more confidence as a shooter and as a scorer, especially as a finisher, around the rim, if he can learn to like drive into contact and drive through contact to where then he can get to the free throw line and get some easy buckets that way, then I think the sky really could be the roof for Killian, and I think you have a really great guard pairing there. And then if you pair that with a guy like Jabari Smith or Paulo Banchero or Chet Holmgren, then I think you're looking at a kind of a real deal Pistons team next year, where I'd be shocked if they weren't in the at least in the play-in. And not even like the 9-10 play-in either. I'd be looking at the 7-8 play-in where they have 2 shots to get into the playoffs. I mean, that's just in my opinion. I'm probably a little bit higher on the Pistons than most people are usually, but I see a real pathway to success here for the Pistons, especially if Kade makes the leap that I suspect he's going to. Hey, I'm saying we called it. I told you guys, Minnesota, Utah, and the Warriors. And right now, Minnesota's up 8-0 on Memphis. I hope you got your parlays in. Yeah, well, with these games starting, I am going to